Two police officers vanished during a routine patrol. No gunshots, no signs of struggle, just the radio still transmitting static. If they didn't run, then who made them disappear? Narration continues. A disappearance that went unsolved for 5 years. No arrests, no charges. The families were left with questions no one ever answered. But then on an ordinary morning, the little girl found something that shook all of Riverside County to its core. Hidden Echoes brings you a story not just about two missing officers, but about a community that once looked the other way, and a secret buried too deep, right beneath the very ground they walked on every day. I'm Steve from Hidden Echoes, and this is the story of Jamal Brooks and Darius Cole, two men who stepped into the woods to protect their community and never came back. Jamal Brooks wasn't your superhero type of hero. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a deep, warm voice, and he had this habit of nodding his head slightly when greeting someone. A small gesture, but one that made people feel seen, feel respected. Born and raised in South Riverside, where red brick houses blended into dusty basketball courts and late-night barbershops, Jamal wasn't known for the badge he wore later in life, but for being the big brother every kid in the neighborhood looked up to. Before he ever joined the force, Jamal was the unofficial football coach for the local kids. He taught them how to pass, how to stay on their feet, and most importantly, how not to give up after getting knocked down. Many of those kids are grown now. Some moved away, others stayed, but all of them remember him as the first person who taught them to believe in themselves. He met his wife, Alicia, at a community fundraiser where he was volunteering to coordinate free meals for the homeless. They got married 3 years later and moved into a small sky blue house at the end of the block with their 2 children, Malik, 7, and Layla, 3. Jamal told bedtime stories to Layla every night. For Malik, he was his first gym buddy. When Jamal joined the Riverside Police Department, not everyone in the black community was thrilled. The relationship between law enforcement and the neighborhood had never been easy. But Jamal understood that. He never demanded trust. He earned it. He took time to talk with street vendors, stopped by crowded corners just to ask, "Y'all doing okay?" Today, he showed up at community meetings no one required him to attend, and once pulled money out of his own pocket to buy milk for a single mother who'd lost her wallet. At just 34, Jamal had become someone everyone called by his first name, no need for a title. To the department, he was a model officer. To the neighborhood, he was just Jamal, the man you could count on to show up. His life seemed solid, simple, steady. But on the evening of October 17th, Jamal left his house at 4 p.m. for his evening patrol shift and never came home. No one could have guessed that a man so careful he double-checked the locks before bed could vanish, without a trace, leaving behind a wife, 2 kids, a whole community, and a hole no one could fill. Darius Cole wasn't like Jamal. He was younger, quieter, and when he smiled, he flashed by so fast you'd think he was afraid. Someone might see too much in his eyes. Born in 1997, he grew up in Eden Park, a neighborhood known for being a place you don't stick around for long. His mom, Janice, worked night shifts as a nurse. His dad left before he turned 5. Darius's childhood was a revolving door, new schools, new homes, new faces, but the one thing that never changed was the feeling of living on the outside of everything. And yet, Darius had a quiet strength no one saw coming. He watched. He remembered. At the police academy, one instructor once said, "This kid isn't just studying to pass. He's studying like he's trying to understand the whole damn world." He graduated in the top 5% of his class and was offered a spot in the community service program. Instead of choosing an easier city, he chose Riverside. He chose it because his mom lived there, because it was the place where he'd seen friends get searched just for wearing hoodies, because of the summer afternoons filled with dust and sirens that made kids instinctively lower their heads. Darius came back, not to fix the system, but because if something bad did go down, maybe someone in the patrol car would finally understand where it came from. Jamal and Darius met when Darius first joined the Yes squad. Despite nearly a decade between them, they clicked. Jamal became the big brother Darius never had. During patrol shifts, they talked about everything from de-escalation techniques to unsent letters to X's. Jamal taught Darius how to listen for what's not being said, and Darius reminded Jamal that the world was changing, where trust came from actions, not badges. Darius never told anyone, but he'd once thought about changing paths, going back to school to become a behavioral analyst, specializing in missing persons. He was haunted by people who vanished, not out of curiosity, but because of the terrifying silence they left behind. And then Darius became one of them. That night, on their final patrol, Darius sent a message to his mom. After shift, I'll stop by with bread. Don't stay up too late. The message was never marked as seen. When Janice woke at 2 a.m., and Darius still hadn't come home, she knew, in that unbearable way only a mother can, that the thing that haunted him had come for him. Riverside is a small city in southern Georgia, a place where maps don't draw hard lines between this side and that side, but everyone knows. Weather-worn streets, faded shop signs, and family. Diners passed down for 3 generations, give it a warmth and nostalgia, but also make it easy to overlook. In city council meetings, people talked budgets and industrial growth, but no one mentioned the rundown houses or the kids growing up without a single real rec center. That's the place Jamal and Darius chose to serve. Not because it was the brightest place, but because it needed them the most. Their patrol shifts didn't start with license plate checks. They started with coffee at Bessie's Diner, where the owner, a soft-spoken woman with warm brown skin, liked to tell stories about her husband, being a cop in the 60s. They drove past Hollow Ridge Park, where kids playing ball used to tense up at the sight of a cruiser until Jamal learned to roll down his window and wave first. Those waves turned into habits, then into trust. They weren't just the police anymore. They were Uncle Jamal and Big Bro Darius. When they vanished, the community shook, but only for a while. The news ran some scattered reports. Initial searches brought out rescue teams and volunteers. Then winter came. Budgets ran out. Other emergencies came up. And slowly, everything went quiet. The Hollow Creek farm was taped off for a bit. Then, the tape came down. No arrests. No surveillance footage. No final phone call. Life moved on, like it always does in places where people disappear, leaving behind a scar no one ever tends to. Alicia, Jamal's wife, started going to city council. Meetings every month, holding up his photo and using her 3 minutes to ask, if we don't look for them, who's going to look when it's your loved? One missing, Janice, Darius's mom, built a small altar at home. Every morning, she lit a single white candle. She didn't pray. She just whispered, if you're still out there, hold on. I won't forget. Riverside was never rich, but it had memory. People remembered who helped fix the roof after a storm, who broke up a fight at the car wash, who carried their child to the ambulance after a bike crash. And they remembered 2 officers who walked into the woods on duty and never came back. But memory, if not protected, can be buried, just like so many other things that have gone missing in this town. Saturday, October 17th. It was an unusually crisp and clear fall day in Teatot, Riverside. The air was cool, the sky cloudless, and the sun dipped low like the world itself was moving at the right pace. For Jamal and Darius, it was their 4th patrol shift that week from 4 p.m. to midnight. They started by checking in on the east side, hotspot, where rumors had been circulating about illegal gatherings in the abandoned industrial zone. Then they passed the old sugar mill, stopped by a convenience store to chat with the owner who'd been robbed last year, and continued west toward the thick woods surrounding Hollow Creek Farm. According to the Riverside PD shift log at approximately 9:42 p.m., Jamal radioed in, Unit 41, checking out Rucker, Mill Road, unusual activity in the south field. There was no distress in his voice, no gunshots. That calm, routine call was the last time anyone ever heard from him. The patrol car's GPS showed it came to a stop on Ashintiel, the eastern edge of Hollow Creek Farm at 9:46. 4 minutes later, the radio remained live, Michael. Open, no voices, just the sound of wind hissing and dry leaves rustling close to the receiver. By 10:18 p.m., dispatch attempted multiple callbacks, no response. At 10:43, a response unit was dispatched. They found the patrol car off a dirt path. Emergency lights still flashing, radio still active, but the vehicle was empty. The doors weren't locked. Darius's coffee cup was still steaming. Jamal's hat sat on the passenger seat, placed neatly, like no one had left in a hurry. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, no drag marks, no rounds fired. Jamal's firearm remained holstered. Darius's was missing, unclear if it was taken or carried. There were no clear footprints due to hard ground, and a thick bed of fallen leaves. Even the K9 units lost the trail just a few meters, into the woods. Hollow Creek Farm, where they were last believed to have gone, spans nearly 30 acres. It once raised cattle but had been abandoned since 1998. The current owner was listed as an out-of-state real estate company. No one had seen anyone manage or visit the Bloodstained property. Locals mentioned hearing strange noises from the area on occasion, but wrote it off as wildlife. That patrol shift should have ended at midnight. But instead of returning to the station, Jamal and Darius seemed to have stepped into thin air, into a blank space on the city's map and a blank space in the memory of a community. That same night, when the first responders failed to locate the two officers, Riverside PD activated an emergency missing persons protocol. A special unit and local search and rescue teams were dispatched. By dawn, 12 officers, 3 canines, and a drone were sweeping the forest around Hollow Creek. But the terrain made searching nearly impossible. Dense woods, unstable ground, and old sinkholes once used to bury industrial waste. In the first 48 hours, all hope hinged on the idea that the two might be injured, trying to signal for help. But no calls came from their personal phones. Both devices were missing, despite records showing they always carried them. One detail in the search report stuck with investigators. About 60 meters from the car, a Bloodstained pine tree had fresh bark scraped off. At its base, a shallow impression in the soil shaped like a footprint, not adult-sized, child-sized. They suspected an animal, but that didn't explain why the patrol radio kept us transmitting for over 8 hours until it was manually shut off for diagnostics. Surveillance review yielded nothing. The path into the field had no public cameras. The nearest homes, nearly 2 miles away, had no security systems. One man, Eugene Trotter, lived about 1.5 miles from the scene. He claimed he heard a faint siren around 10 p.m. Didn't last, he said, like someone turned it on, then cut it quick. Asked why he didn't call it in, he simply said, "Round here we learn not to get involved unless we see it with our own eyes." Meanwhile, Riverside poured into the streets. Vigils were held. Posters went up all over town. People brought flashlights, stayed out all night, searching the woods themselves. A fundraiser was launched to support the search and the families. For 10 days, media coverage was relentless. Some Atlanta outlets, even a local CNN team, showed up in Riverside. But like all cases that yield no new leads, the headlines faded. On day 11, the formal search effort was suspended for lack of viable leads. A police spokesperson stated, "We're not giving up, but right now every trail has gone cold." Privately, questions remained unspoken. If they were attacked, why no sign of a struggle? If lured, who knew their patrol route? And if someone made them disappear, how did they leave no trace at all? The only answer at the time was this. All possibilities were on the table, and every one of them was as cold and silent as the windless morning they vanished. No sound, no shadow, just the echo left in the hearts of those still searching. 5 years passed. Riverside changed slowly, like southern towns often do. A few businesses closed. A few houses got fresh paint. A new bridge crossed the western creek. But one thing stayed the same. On the old wooden board outside the city library, the poster still read, "Missing officers Jamal, Brooks, and Darius. Cole, Someone repinned it every month. No one took it down, but the rain had faded the ink, and the curled edges whispered, "Does anyone still remember?" Then came a March morning. The sky was gray and wet, fog hanging low like dust on memory. At the southern edge of Hollow Creek, an 8-year-old girl named Tyla was with her father, Leonard Maynard, collecting moss for a school biology project. They hadn't planned to go far in, but a fallen tree blocked the main path. Leonard led them down a lesser-known trail overgrown with faint tire marks. It wasn't on any local maps. Someone's used this recently, he thought. The tracks are fresh. While resting near a fallen log, Tyla spotted something glinting beneath the rotting leaves. Leonard thought it was trash, but when he nudged it with a stick, it came into view, an oval piece of metal, its edges warped, crusted in dirt and dried blood. He wiped the surface and froze. Stamped on the badge, Riverside Police Deftones. Below it, faded but legible, Officer D. Cole, 1417. No confirmation was needed. That was Darius's badge, issued his first year in duty. Officers only receive one unless officially replaced. Darius had never reported it missing. It was found nearly 400 meters from where the patrol car had been, deeper, off-route, and outside. The original search perimeter. Police were on scene within 30 minutes. The area was immediately cordoned off. New K-9 units were deployed, this time equipped with GPS trackers and advanced scent sensors. It didn't take long before they led investigators to something strange, a large boulder partially hidden behind fallen trees, its roots forming a natural trap. Beneath it, there was a smell, burnt, chemical, or decomposing. No one could tell. As forensic teams peeled back the soil layer by layer, they made a discovery that stopped the scene cold, a strip of dark navy fabric, stitched like a uniform, and a rusted handcuff still, clinging to a single long, coiled hair. But what made the entire team hold their breath wasn't the fabric or the hair. It was a single footprint pressed into the wet earth nearby, too small for any officer, like a child's. Then another, and another, smaller still, and quietly, in the back of every investigator's mind, the same question began to take shape. Why, in the place where two grown men disappeared, are there footprints that could only belong to children? Since Darius's badge was found, then the Riverside Police Department officially reopened the case, this time treating it as a potential homicide. But the investigation wasn't just about retracing steps. It was about peeling back 5 years' worth of dust covering reports, interviews, and evidence, files. And the more they looked, the more the pieces refused to fit. According to the original search maps, the area where the badge turned up hadn't been searched back in 2019 because a terrain map provided by the Parks Department labeled the land as inaccessible due to landslide risk. But when a new ground survey was conducted, there were no signs of any significant erosion. In fact, the path Leonard and Tyla Maynard used clearly showed signs of recent use. Grass split down the middle by tire tracks, branches snapped in deliberate patterns, more like someone had cleared a trail than wandered through. Lieutenant Hannah Cruz, newly transferred to the department just 18 months earlier, was assigned to lead the investigation. Digging through municipal records, she found that in a 2017 land registry, that section of forest was oddly labeled as temporary wildlife reserve, an unusual designation with no formal decree attached. Cruz traced the title to a now-defunct company called Elmsworth Holdings LLC, based out of Delaware. The company had dissolved in 2021, and no one seemed to know who had actually owned it. In a closed-door meeting, Cruz asked bluntly, "Who decided not to search that direction? And why were we relying on a map? No one verified on the ground?" No one had an answer. At the same time, in an effort to re-interview locals near Hollow Creek, Cruz circled back to Eugene Trotter, the man who once said he'd heard sirens the night the officers went missing. This time, Eugene hesitated. After a long pause, he pulled out an old spiral notebook. "I didn't want to get involved," it muttered, "but I wrote it down." On the yellowed page was a brief pencil scrawl. 2218, heard. Screaming. Kids? Cruz leaned in. You heard children that night? Eugene gave a slow nod, eyes drifting toward the window. Thought I imagined it. Who'd bring kids into the woods that late? Simple question, but it sent a chill down her spine. Because if he really did hear children, then someone either used them for something or those footprints belonged to someone no one ever expected to be out there. That same week, the forensic lab returned results. On the hair sample found with the rusted cuff and key uniform scrap, it didn't belong to Darius. It wasn't Jamal's either. The DNA wasn't in any state database across Georgia. It was female. Estimated age, 6 to 9 years old. The room fell into a heavy silence when the results came through. The original question, where did the two officers go, was now overshadowed by something more unsettling. Who else had been kept in those woods? 3 weeks after the case was reopened, Lieutenant Cruz received a surprising call from the public health office. A nurse at a volunteer clinic in Baldwin County, about a 90-minute drive from Riverside, reported that a woman named Chanel Moore might know something related to the missing cops in the woods. She hadn't filed a report, but had come in complaining of insomnia and had mentioned a forest with lights and chains. Cruz drove out to speak with her in person. Chanel, 29, had once been a seasonal worker at a farm near Darius, the Georgia-Alabama border. Records showed she had gone off-grid for about 3 months in 2019. When questioned, she was silent at first. But when Cruz showed her a photo of the rusted handcuffs, her expression changed, not with words, but with a fear that needed no explanation. That, Chanel whispered, cut into my wrists every night. After a while, I couldn't even feel it anymore. In fragmented recollections, she said that in early October 2019, she had been recruited by a man named Clayton, who claimed to run a private eco-farm in Unsolved, needed help clearing out an old storage unit. He'd picked her up in a truck. At first, everything seemed normal, but after 3 days, she was locked in a cement room, no windows, one bare bulb, and the whir of a ceiling fan. She was fed twice a day. No conversation, no questions. She had no idea how long she was kept there, only that one night she heard 2 men arguing outside, followed by a high-pitched sound like a siren. Then silence. Did anyone ever come to help you? Cruz asked. Chanel shook her head. I woke up at a truck, stopped hundreds of miles away with a backpack, some cash, and a warning. If you tell anyone, they won't believe you. Who believes a girl no one reported missing? Cruz knew she was on thin ice. No physical evidence. No formal complaint. But there was something in Chanel's eyes, something torn, heavy with shame that she couldn't ignore. Back at the command center, she ran the name Clayton through every database. No full match. But in a 2019 employment registry of independent contractors working around Hollow Creek, one unusual entry popped up: C. Reddick, Ranch, Logistics, LLC. The name appeared only once, then vanished from all. Tax records, banking activity, and property. Filings after November 2019. No address. No phone number. But when Cruz cross-referenced financial filings from Elmsworth Holdings, the company that once owned Hollow Creek, one note stood out. In 2019, a small prefabricated structure had been temporarily installed on the rear lot of the property. The reason listed: field station for experimental wildlife research. No agency ever confirmed any such research. No scientific organization had applied for permits. And the structure? It had never been found. Until now. At the end of April, after weeks of cross-referencing old satellite imagery with drone footage from the initial search campaign, Lieutenant Cruz and her team identified a suspicious coordinate north of Hollow Creek. A 2019 satellite image revealed a long rectangular structure, roughly 10 meters in length, flat-roofed, with no record on any official land registry. But by 2020, that same spot showed only overgrown earth, as if nothing had ever been there. On May 2nd, a special investigative unit was deployed to the site. After more than an hour of clearing brush and Scanning terrain, they uncovered a concrete slab, buried beneath a thick layer of soil. A few knocks echoed hollow underneath. A field engineer confirmed this was likely the kit, foundation of a prefab structure, matching the description found in Elmsworth Holdings' old records. Forensics immediately began drilling and removing the slab. What they found beneath it brought the entire scene to a standstill. A small bunker, less than 2 meters tall, with no wash. Windows, walls of corrugated metal and plywood, poorly insulated. Inside, everything was eerily preserved, like a room sealed in time. A single iron bed frame, a tin chair with shackles, a few moldy children's clothes, and a ceiling bulb with no power source. On the wall, written in shaky black marker, were fragmented phrases. Were you good? If you're quiet, she'll come. No crying, no cold, no bodies, no sounds. But the presence in that room felt more chilling than any corpse. A small surveillance camera was found mounted to the ceiling beam, but the memory card had been removed. The only forensic trace was a faint fingerprint, unmatched in the state police system. Near the door lock, clear signs of grinding suggested someone had tried repeatedly to escape. And on the floor near the bed frame, a blood stain soaked deep into the boards. DNA testing confirmed it. The blood belonged to Darius Cole. The discovery was kept tightly sealed. No press, no briefing. Because if that bunker had held even one person, then Jamal and Darius's disappearance was no accident, not a lapse in protocol. It was something calculated, deliberate, hidden. That night, Cruz sat alone in her office, flipping through Darius's personnel file. A loose note fell from between the pages. In Darius's handwriting, what I fear most isn't disappearing. It's being found, but not by the people looking for me. Finding Darius's blood in the underground room shifted the entire case toward one goal: uncovering the real owner of the Hollow Creek property, the person or organization who built that structure and designed that underground prison. But Elmsworth Holdings, the real estate shell company once listed as owner, had dissolved into legal dust. All tax records and financial filings ended abruptly in late 2020, right around the time public attention faded. No CEO, no physical office, no known point of contact, but one supplemental filing from 2019 sent to the local land agency contained a materials transport list. One name stood out: Ranch Logistics LLC, operated by a man named Clayton Reddick. Cruz ordered a background check. Results confirmed Clayton Reddick, 47, former long-haul driver. He had a sealed juvenile record and a prior arrest for alleged abuse of a minor in Arkansas. No conviction due to lack of evidence, and a withdrawn witness. Over the past decade, he'd worked at 3 remote farms, all tied to agricultural equipment, restoration, and biological preservation research. But after late 2019, Clayton disappeared from every federal system. No bank activity, no tax filings, no ID renewals, as if he'd vanished. But Cruz didn't believe in disappearances, not like that. She believed he was still out there, hidden, living somewhere off-grid, aided by informal transport networks, or protected by a group no one dared name. A system that preyed on the invisible, women possessed of color, undocumented children, seasonal workers. The final clue didn't come from a file. It came from a person. Deron Hughes, a former delivery driver with a past weapons charge, was being questioned for an unrelated case. During interrogation, he mentioned a job back in 2019, delivering supplies to Hollow Creek. Clayton had told him it was veterinary equipment. But when he got there, Deron saw something else: chains, rubber-wrapped mattresses, and a truck with faded blood on the rear door. He quit the job soon after and never spoke of it again. "No one's going to believe a guy like me," he said. "But I know what I saw. I drove into the place those 2 men never came out of." Deron's testimony wasn't enough to indict, but combined with everything, the bunker, Darius's blood, the child-sized footprints, the buried badge, and a trail of scrubbed legal records, Lieutenant Cruz now had the grounds to initiate a federal manhunt. because Jamal and Darius's disappearance was no longer an isolated mystery. It was a thread leading into a dark network that had existed in the shadows for years, right? Beneath a community that thought it knew peace. And in that darkness, Clayton Reddick, or whatever name he's using, now still hasn't been found. Nearly 2 months after the investigation was reopened, the mood inside the Riverside Police Department had shifted, tense, fragmented, and uneasy. In the beginning, most believed Jamal and Darius were victims of an outside force, a faceless predator, an anonymous network, some invisible monster. But the deeper the team dug, the more the inconsistencies began to point not to the gunshots perpetrator, but to the very system that once stood behind the 2 missing officers. A sealed file from 2019 was unexpectedly decrypted, following an FBI request. Inside was an internal report from a tech staffer, noting that the patrol vehicle's GPS had briefly gone off route for 12 minutes the night of the disappearance. The system had recorded an artificial location, before self-correcting. The anomaly had been marked as a software glitch and never escalated. But a fresh technical audit revealed it was real-time data tampering, likely triggered manually, meaning someone had intentionally altered the coordinates to mislead the search. Lieutenant Cruz, once a believer in protocol, was now asking herself a hard question. If someone was the inside helped mislead the search, who else was keeping us in the dark? She began a quiet audit of all personnel who had access to system data the night Jamal and Darius vanished. One name stood out, Dennis Vale, the department's IT officer at the time, who had quietly transferred out of state in early 2020, just as Elmsworth Holdings was dissolved. When tracked down, Dennis was cooperative but visibly uneasy. In an off-the-record conversation, he admitted he'd been instructed to disable internal alerts when the system flagged the false GPS ping. When Cruz asked who gave the order, Dennis only shook his head. There are calls, he whispered, that don't come from the system. They come from people you're not thinking of. Meanwhile, a young investigator named Malik Shaw, coincidentally sharing a name with Jamal's. So notice the detail overlooked in the original scene maps. About 600 meters south of where the badge was, found was an old industrial waste pit last used in the late 90s. Shaw requested permission to excavate. On the first dig, they uncovered a rotting wooden crate. Inside, moldy children's clothes and a torn picture book. On the first page, scribbled in faded crayon, Emmy, kindergarten. But no one named Emmy had ever been reported missing in Riverside. That's when the entire narrative began to fracture. Maybe Jamal and Darius's disappearance wasn't the first. Maybe others had vanished long before, but were never reported. No one looked for them. No one with enough power ever started an investigation. In the days that followed, the unease spread, not just among the task force, but throughout the very community that had long placed its trust in the integrity of Riverside's police. Official updates remained confidential, but rumors began to ripple. Whispers of blood evidence, a secret room, and the possibility that someone within the department may have helped set the trap. And most chilling of all, residents began to ask among the uniforms walking these streets, who already knew. Cruz knew she needed a breakthrough. She returned to the waste pit at the south end of Hollow Creek. This time, forensics dug deeper. After 3 days, they uncovered 2 small skeletal remains, badly broken, housed in a decayed wooden box buried without caskets. Preliminary analysis confirmed they were children, 1 boy, 1 girl, estimated between ages 6 and 9. The bones bore signs of long-term restraint. No trauma indicating sudden death, but the rib cages showed signs of severe malnutrition. Near the box, investigators found a tattered page from a journal. The only legible entry was scrawled in shaky handwriting. They said they'd let me go if I didn't cry. I stopped crying. But I haven't seen the light in a long time. No name, no date, just a farewell written by someone who never got to be remembered. Cruz brought the full internal report to federal authorities. A closed-door meeting was held involving representatives from 3 neighboring states. In that meeting, an old case file surfaced. In 1997, there had been an unconfirmed report of a Georgia ranch allegedly holding undocumented children for survival testing. The case was dismissed for lack of witnesses, no arrests, no charges. The official who signed off on the dismissal? The then deputy chief of Riverside PD, who had quietly retired just 6 months earlier. And so the question twisted again. If someone had known about shady activity at Hollow Creek, why? Were Jamal and Darius dispatched there that exact night? Did they choose the route, or were they sent? A chilling possibility emerged. What if they disappeared, not because they were tricked, but because they saw too much? The Riverside community began to fracture. One side clung to faith and justice. The other feared that the truth would destroy what little trust remained. For a black community long accustomed to being forgotten, this was something different, because now it looked like the very people who had stood for them may have been sacrificed by a system that rotted from within. And perhaps the most heartbreaking fact of all, despite everything we now know, the bodies of Jamal Brooks and Darius Cole still haven't been found. They are still missing. At the Riverside Community Center, a new memorial wall now stands. It's not tall, not ornate, just a plain white board with 2 framed photos, Jamal Brooks and Darius Cole. Beneath them, in simple handwriting, still missing, still missed. Every evening, people come by. They bring flowers, pin notes, or just stand there in silence for a while before walking away. There are no graves, no bodies. But this is the one place that still says they were here and they mattered. Darius's mother, Ms. Lenora Cole, never moved out of the house where he grew up. She told the only reporter granted an interview, "Every morning, I make 2 cups of coffee, one for me, one for him. I know he's not coming home, but I can't stop waiting." She's kept his room exactly as it was in 2019. His officer's jacket still hangs on the door. His polished shoes sit neatly beneath the bed. To her, Darius isn't gone. He's just on a patrol shift that's running longer than usual. Jamal's family chose another path. They left Riverside in the 2nd year, after the story faded from the news. But recently, his sister Tiana returned to launch a foundation in his name, Jamal's Light, and organization supporting families of missing loved ones who never made the headlines. At the opening event, Tiana said, "My brother saw the things other people ignored, the small things. A kid crying in the corner, a woman sitting silent in the back row. Now, I want people to see him by making sure no one else disappears in silence." Public opinion has begun to divide. Some demand deeper investigations into Elmsworth Holdings, the land ownership system, and the individuals who buried critical data. Others say it's time to move on. We've hurt. Enough. But pain doesn't end just because we look away. It simply changes shape, grows quiet, waits, and cracks open again when the weight gets too heavy. At one community meeting, a young boy, maybe 10 years old, stood up and asked, "Can I still be a cop, even if I know I might never come home?" This room fell silent. No adult could answer, but Ms. Lenora looked at him, steady, quiet, and her eyes said what no words could. "If you're good, go. But know this, sometimes the right thing won't be protected unless you're the one who protects it. Where the underground room once stood, there is now only a patch of dirt. Grass is slowly growing back, but the scar remains, not because it's large, but because it never truly healed." In the 6th summer, Hollow Creek was sold to a forest preservation group. They pledged not to build, not to develop, only to replant trees and create a quiet memorial path. A small plaque was placed at the entrance, etched with the words, "For the ones who walked into silence, the case of Jamal Brooks and Darius Cole remains unsolved. No one has been charged, no confessions, no bodies. But for those left behind, the answer doesn't live in legal files. It lives in how a community chooses to face its grief, in their decision to remember, even without a funeral, in how they teach their children that disappearing is not the same as being forgotten, and that sometimes Justice doesn't come from a courtroom, but from a collective memory that refuses to let a name fade away. Lieutenant Hannah Cruz left the department the following year, not because she failed, but because she was tired. In a rare interview, she said, "I never found the person who did this, but I learned what allowed it to happen. Silence. From the system, from the town, from the people who thought if they didn't speak, it would just go away." The story of Jamal and Darius isn't just a missing persons case. It's a warning that even in uniform, black lives can vanish like anyone else's. And when that happens, will anyone ask why? Will anyone believe? In the quietest hours of the kill night, some in Riverside say they still hear a faint radio signal echoing from deep within the Bloodstained woods, a call that never fully cut out, a voice, a hum, a reminder that two men were here once, that they were brave, and that they believed they were doing the right thing. And if you're still listening, if you've made it this far, then maybe you are the one they were waiting for. What do you think really happened that night? Duo. You believe Jamal and Darius walked into silence? Or did someone make sure they'd never speak? Again?